Following on from my last video, where I met up with Maelstrom Marine to have a trial of their inflatable kayak boats, and where I was suitably impressed that I bought one there and then. This video illustrates how I have now kitted out my boat to suit my needs, which includes rowing, paddling, exploring and occasional fishing. I hope my ideas help assist anyone else setting up their boat. I also put it through some paddling and rowing tests which highlight to me some areas my basic boat could be improved. However, it's always worth mentioning it's only my opinion, and you can judge for yourself from the video footage whether these improvements would suit you. Every boat is a compromise and my requirements may differ from yours. Before going any further, it's worth noting that car boats are not new boats. They are a well-proven design. Boats to Go in the United States designed a crossover between a kayak and inflatable boat in 2006 under the Saturn brand name. They christened it the car boat. Although the name car boat belongs to them, it is now a common term for this type of boat, and henceforth I will refer to it as a car boat out of respect to the originators. I will also point out that my boat, and all boats in the photographs, are Maelstrom Marine's inflatable kayak boats, and it is myself who calls them car boats, not Maelstrom Marine. I trust that clarifies any ambiguity over the term car boat, and also credits the correct people. History lesson over, it's now time to jump on into how I kitted my car boat out. On my first trip in the car boat, I knew I'd have to find a way to secure things like the fuel tank. The solution to the problem was very easy and not expensive. I bought an 8-pack of interlocking foam mat tiles, available from most DIY stores for around £20. The tiles are exceptionally tough to wear and tear, but very easy to work with. The serrated edge of a bread knife cuts through them like butter. The glue from a hot melt glue gun firmly adheres the pieces, which are then reinforced by zip ties threaded through holes. I cut them for a snug fit against the car boat tubes so there is no movement, with 4 pieces covering and protecting the entire airflow. I built layered walls that the fuel tank snugly fits into, so it can't move around. The walls were also hot air glued and strengthened with white zip ties as shown. A blue bow box, which is one of those plastic bins also sold in DIY stores, and I used a piece of ply as a lid. It's held in position in the same way the fuel tank is secured to the foam tiles. Then a wide strap anchored to the boat's side handles holds the lid and box secure. All very easy stuff to make. The box does get a bit of bouncing about in the chop, so I secured the top box corners to the bow grab rail with some paracord. I intend to do a little fishing from the boat, so drilled a single hole through the transom. I sealed the hole edges by dipping a cotton bud in epoxy glue and then using it to smear the whole walls. The transducer is mounted on the end of a piece of wood which is then secured by a bolt with a wing nut on the far side for easy removal. The cables are simply run along the floor to the depth sounder cum fish finder, which sits either on the floor or on the front seat. The 12-volt battery is kept in the blue bow box, well away from water. And if you wonder what the fancy thing is on top of the bow box, it's just an extending selfie stick from my GoPro camera. Storage space is tight in the car boat, so I wanted some way to mount the fishing rod and also the keep net. The obvious place was tubes in the bow box, but I like to keep the front view clear of clutter for my video shots. So I cut a piece of ply and mounted 2 aluminium tubes to it with cable ties. The ply is held firmly in place by the inflatable floor pushing it against the transom, and also a single bolt from the transducer holds it in place with the wing nut. I painted the ply black to match the transom, and it all comes out when I dismantle the boat. Here is an overview of my work so far. Nothing hard or time-consuming to construct, but for me it makes it a far more functioning craft. So now on to rowing, and for those with eagle eyes, I will also discuss and illustrate my modification of oars and paddle. First off, if you buy this boat specifically for rowing, you will be disappointed. Traditional rowing is done facing the stern of the boat and using your body weight and back to pull the oars, which propel the boat through the water. Unfortunately, unless you can sit like a religious Buddha for long periods, this boat cannot be rowed in the traditional manner. The front seat doesn't move far enough forward to allow your legs to go below the oars. If Maelstrom Marine had extended the seat rail further forward, it may have been possible, but then I would lose space from my bow box, so everything is a compromise. I couldn't row far with my legs in this uncomfortable position. It's not all doom and gloom though. As I'm an ambidextrous kind of rower, I can row backwards, which is far more comfortable. With the rear seat pushed back, I can get my legs below the oars. The issue now is I'm not putting my weight or my back into a power stroke. It's my arm muscles only. So if I'm to get fit rowing, I'm going to have arms like Popeye the Sailor Man. What the car boat is exceptionally good at is paddling, kayak style. It's easy and can be done sitting in any position within the boat. However, even this is a problem. The boat comes with oars and not a kayak paddle. And as mentioned earlier, space in the kayak boat is tight, and there's no room for both the oars and then a paddle in the boat if you carry fishing gear or picnic, etc. Or is there? As well as being an experienced oarsman and kayaker, I also have a very practical mind, so made a DIY solution to this problem. I call it the car oar, and in my opinion, car boat dealers should design and produce a production car oar to make their kayak boats proper multifunctional craft. My DIY car oar, although crude, it's a hybrid of the original oar handles and the kayak paddles I got separately. I had to drill a couple of holes for retaining pins to pop out, and also cut the plastic end off one oar handle so everything slots together to form the paddle, or separate into two oars which are then neatly stowed out the way in the rowlocks. I found that normal kayak paddles were a bit short in length for a 1.1 metre wide car boat. This paddle is 2.4 metres long, and I think a perfect length would be 2.5 metres. The reason being the water dripping from the blades when the paddle was 2.2 metres long dripped into the car boat. At 2.4 metres it drips onto the tubes but runs off the outside of the boat. Hence I think 2.5 metres ideal length. My DIY car oar is longer than the supplied oar. They still fit perfectly well in the tubes, and the extra length deflects the water thrown up by the rear carry handle back outwards, so the boat is now a very dry ride even in a moderate chop. In case you missed how my car oar is assembled, here it is again. I just have to watch and not drop it overboard as I assemble it, so I will tether the bits to the boat with paracord next time around. Of course, the real power of the car boat comes into play when I tire paddling, as I'm not that fit yet. I just start up the outboard and leave it in tick over, locked in a straight ahead position. It makes paddling a breeze, even into a wind. So, although it may appear that I've been a bit harsh on its rowing abilities, do keep in mind it's only my opinion and I'm highlighting things that I think could be improved. You may not notice in the slightest. I do love the versatility of the car boat, especially paddling for miles with the outboard and tick over. And if I'd not bought this boat already, I would buy it tomorrow. The following video clips are of a day out in Loch Etive, and I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. The weather recently has not been good, with Storm Floris due to arrive the following day. I was keen to try out my new car boat again, so launched the boat in Loch Etive at 6 a.m. as it's very common to have no wind in the early hours. It was a grey, overcast morning but dry. The 6 horsepower outboard started third pull from cold, as it always does. The water was flat calm as I started to ease the throttle open. It took a little while to get up in the plane, as initially the bow went high, and then the sensation of running over a whale's back happened as the boat levelled out in the plane. This is very common of all airflows for inflatables. When the water surface is flat, an air bubble collects under the boat and then it pops out the back and it's off in normal plane conditions. I was keen to get to my favourite fishing marks, which are around 5 miles away from the launch area. So I went at almost full throttle and the boat was on rails as I touched 16 miles per hour. Although conditions were perfect in the early hours of the morning, I did expect the wind and rain to start arriving around midday, winds gusting to 25 miles an hour. But it didn't bother me, as I already knew the boat would easily cope with that in the sheltered sea loch conditions. I'm lucky to live beside an exceptionally scenic sea loch, and this is what floats my boat now I'm retired. Forays into the promised land in small boats. The feeling of freedom is enhanced by the peace and quiet as there are no other people around. I was out looking for my favourite brand of pink flesh fish, so eventually slowed to trawling speed and let my lure follow the boat. I discovered my rod and net holders restricted turning to the right, because the tiller handle is on that side, so I put the landing net into the other side, something I may have to rethink. Because I didn't catch a fish within the first 5 minutes, I got bored fishing, so started my keep fit exercises. I'm pretty unfit, so soon got bored of that and sat enjoying the lochside views at Tickover. with the lure following the boat again. The fishing was as dull as the early morning sky, so I started my exercise routine again. I truly enjoyed the peace and quiet of this type of exercise, especially with the outboard switched off. It did cross my mind that a little electric outboard might find its way onto my transom for this type of boating. However, rowing and paddling have a huge advantage over any sort of outboard. I can row in a foot of water without worrying about propellers breaking. As previously mentioned, I'm now 70 years old, and as such I know I have only one body, and spare parts for it might be hard to come by, so I have to look after it by keeping it fit. I cannot think of a better way for me to do that than by using my car boat in the manner it was designed for. Although space is tight, I can happily eat my lunch in it, and I'm always landing to stretch my legs no matter what boat I use. Now full of oatcake, cheese and coffee, I felt like a snooze. So kicked back and started the outboard again. I was quite happy continuing in tick over. I paddled the road around 4 miles that day, half of that with the outboard off, and I hope to increase that distance every time I go. I was now very aware the wind, waves and rain were arriving, and as Storm Flores was due in another 12 hours, I decided it was time to head for home. I never caught a thing, but I feel I didn't waste my day as I got to know my car boat a little better. I hope you enjoyed the video and thanks for watching. In the next video I take it to sea for a 50-mile run and also ride a whitewater tidal race, so do come back to see how it passes that test.